in the Middle East today?
Yeah, seriously.
Thanks, Charles, for letting me use your gardening supplies. I'll make sure I put it back in the garage. Man, tending to that lawn is a lot of work.
Tell you the truth, Jim, I'm more concerned about keeping this house.
What's going on?
Well, you know, Sarah lost her job 2 months ago, right?
Yeah.
Since we lost that income, the bills have been piling up, and we're so far behind. I don't want to lose the house because of back taxes. I don't know what to do.
I understand. The same thing happened to my sister and her husband when he lost his job. Do you know that the Wayne County Treasurer has plans and programs to help people stay in their homes?
No, I didn't. Tell me about it.
Yeah, go to www.treasure.waynecounty.com to see if you qualify.
What's that site again?
www.treasure.waynecounty.com.
Got it.
All right.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Week That Was. My name is Saeed Khan, and I am joined by 7 illustrious voices. Nancy, is that a word that we can use?
You're allowed to use that word, yeah.
We can use illustrious, yes. Yeah. Heavy emphasis on the second syllable. But a lot happening in the world, so let's go around and make the introductions. Again, we are joined by our troika of lawyers. We have Bill Seikaly, Steve Fishman with the Center Square, and Joel Sklar. We have somebody new. Welcome, author of Summer on Fire, Peter Werbe, also longtime Detroit radio personality. We have labor and community activist Barb Ingalls. We've got a veteran journalist Nancy Derringer, and of course, co-founder of Deadline Detroit, Allan Lengel. So, they always
say. Can I just say before we get started, I'll take Steve Fishman to block. So we need one more person in there to really make it the Hollywood Squares. Never mind. Go ahead.
Well, so Fish can decide if he wants to be the Alice in the Brady Bunch schematic or Paul Lind from the Hollywood Squares. I see him as
Paul Lind, a straight Paul Lind. You know,
Paul Lind.
Yeah,
great.
Wait a minute. Paul Lind was gay?
You're never saying Liberace was gay. Stop.
He lost that weight on the watermelon diet. Anyway, please.
I
know we have a lot of serious things to get to, so let's.
Austin. I think in the Austin Power movie, when he woke up from his deep sleep, he said, "Oh my God, I didn't know that Liberace was gay." So him and you both. Well, they do say that celebrities die in threes. And we will talk about Henry Kissinger, but I also want to pay tribute to the former singer of the Pogues, Shane MacGowan. But breaking news of the third in that group, the career of George Santos in Congress. The vote just came down, and Congress voted 311 to 114 to expel the Republican congressman from New York. 105 Republicans voted for the resolution to expel. 2 Democrats voted against the resolution to expel him. But ding dong, Santos is gone. What does this mean now that, of course, the
he's not gone. He's just out of Congress.
Santos is not gone. He's out of Congress. There's a big difference there.
Okay, but his congressional career died.
What's his post-Congress career going to look like? A lot of these guys, they always wind up landing on their feet, but he might land in prison.
I think he might land in prison, exactly. Yeah. So what do we think is going to go on with the politics of this? And he's actually already said that he wants to run for re-election.
Of course he does, and he might win because those people are nuts.
No. Not
his district.
Not his district.
Biden took his district by 10.
Yeah, but I'd just like to say I'm struck by the fact that in the last, say, 20 years or so, we have seen in a country that's now 200 and roughly 50 years old, going on there 240 some years old, that we have seen things happen in the United States Congress and Senate that have rarely or never happened before. And we've had We had one. I remember learning in like high school that we had one impeachment in American history, and since then we have had 3, and we're looking at a 4th, perhaps. We have. I mean, when was the last time anyone was expelled from Congress? I mean, I was making a joke about the Hollywood Squares, but these people have turned, the Newt Gingrich led Republican revolution has turned the United States government into a reality show. I mean, George Santos has essentially been voted off the island. Pack your knives and go. It's ridiculous. He didn't get a rose or whatever the hell it is. I mean, it's government as cheap, shitty entertainment. And it's kind of terrifying in a lot of ways.
But Nancy, what's really different?
I don't know. What are you fishing for something here?
From my perspective, this is a question of an inability to self-regulate.
Oh God, yes, yeah.
There was a time in our recent past where we saw it work.
Right.
Nixon, we didn't have to go through an impeachment of Nixon because the Republicans
was enough to get him to resign.
Said, look, you can't do this. In any sane world, that would have happened with Trump.
Right. When I was
who I, by the way, want to nominate as George Santos, if he does end up in prison, as I think he and Trump ought to be cellmates.
Roomies.
I know cruel and unusual punishment probably prohibits it. But.
They can swap orange makeup with each other.
They say who were the 2 Democrats that voted against his expulsion? I couldn't.
You know what? Let me go ahead and find that for you. The 2 Democrats were Bobby Scott of Virginia and Nikema Williams of Georgia. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, those are the 2 that voted against. There were 2 who voted present. Democrats Jonathan Jackson from Illinois and Al Green. Let's stay together from
the
Texas.
original Al.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Crazy.
I think he wanted everyone to stay together in Congress. Right. So there.
Well, I think it's just a sad commentary that people kept saying, "Oh, we need due process or whatever." I mean, come on, the guy just lied from day one. He deceived the voters, and and people were still saying, "No, he needs to be convicted of a crime before." And Congress has a process to remove people like that, and they did. They went way out of their way to really lay down everything. Where it was just I mean, the Republicans should be shameful, the ones who voted to let him remain there.
And how did he? Sorry, go ahead, Steve.
No, I just think this is a classic case, and Trump kind of did this to himself too. Santos is a crook. I mean, obviously he's a crook. He's going to get convicted for sure. Peter mentioned him. He's going to be on trial. He's going to prison for sure. I mean, these are federal cases, and he's going. And you have to think, had he just minded his own business and he brings himself to the attention of the world, and then they're shocked. I don't know if you guys saw any of his supposed press conference yesterday. It was unbelievable to me that there were that many microphones to listen to this asshole. I mean, why would anybody give a shit what he has to say about anything? But he brings it on himself by putting himself in the public eye. Trump did the same thing. He's been stealing and banditing his entire career, and now everything is being examined all the time. He winds up indicted 4 times because he pushes himself out there. They have no, I don't know if it's self-awareness or just the notion that once you get out in the public eye, people start looking at you. And that's what's happened to Santos. And when he trots off to the federal penitentiary, he can look in the mirror and blame himself.
Well,
they both claim to be victims.
The word pathological has really been diminished lately. It's just used sort of as an insult. But the guy really is a pathological liar.
Yeah.
I mean, there's something at work there that is truly disturbing.
So I've got to ask those people on the panel who are non-Gentiles, do you feel better that now the hyphen has been removed for Jewish?
I don't like that Jewish thing. That was somewhat clever.
His presentation, though, is just so insane. It's a caricature, and it is bizarre to watch him. And I thought his press conferences were just.
Well, look at how he behaved. He behaved like a character on a reality show, I mean, like he's a Real Housewife or something, Well, you call me a crook. Well, you're a woman beater. I mean, he's like this. He's talking about if I were a gay man, I would be really insulted by that guy because he's like every gay stereotype out there. And I mean, it's just, he's a bitchy queen, and it's just go figure. But
or if you're Jewish. You'd be insulted.
All I know is I will never ever wear a dress shirt with a tie underneath a crew neck shirt with a blazer. Ever.
What's Paul Yang gonna do now on Saturday Night Live is what I want to know. That was some of his greatest moments.
Yeah. Well, I've got one more probably to squeeze in.
Well,
one more.
Nancy, to echo what you were saying, maybe it was before the show. We're giving him a lot of ink right now.
Yeah. You didn't use okay, never mind.
Okay.
We don't have to explain the provenance of this joke.
Is there anything else happening?
So his parting words, in case anybody cares, are "to hell with this place." I thought that was, of course, quite.
Did he really say that?
Did he really flounce off? Honest to God.
So eloquent. Well, Bill, you mentioned the idea about roomies in prison. It seems now that Georgia, although it's a completely unrelated case, Georgia prosecutors have rejected plea deals for Trump, Mark Meadows, and Rudy Giuliani. It seems as though the vice grip of those kinds of cases is getting even narrower, and perhaps a feeling of emboldenment among the Georgia prosecutors that they don't need to negotiate. And I know, Fish, you have said for a very long time that all roads lead to Georgia when it comes to Trump. So what's your assessment about this?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I read the same article. When they say rejected plea agreements, to those of us who do criminal stuff, that means you've been talking about a plea agreement. That means you sat down and he proposed, look, I'll plead to this and you'll dismiss that. I've never heard anything on behalf of any of those three guys that any lawyer of theirs, for sure Trump is not doing that. So I'm not sure what that language meant. What it means usually is they get together. It happens all the time in our practice, particularly in federal court. You get together and you say, hey, can we resolve this case? But the only way you can resolve a criminal case is with the defendant pleading guilty. And I haven't heard a hint from any of those three characters that they're going to do that. So I really thought the headline was misleading. I think in the Times, is where I saw it. I thought it was a very misleading headline, unless there's something that none of us know that's going on in the back room somewhere. And have you guys heard anything like that? I sure haven't.
I did read the article in the Times, but I read another article. I'm not sure where it was, Axios, someplace, that really said that the issue was the prosecutor's office decided they would not engage in the conversation. So you would be absolutely right.
I can tell you this, that's bullshit. That's absolute bullshit. Every prosecutor's office everywhere in the world will engage in a conversation if they can get a guilty plea and avoid having to take a chance with 12 people. If they said that, they're bullshitting. I can tell you that for sure.
Well, perhaps it meant initiate.
That right. So what they need to do, what the press needs to do, if you're going to report on this stuff, get somebody to talk. If it's going to be on TV, get someone who's actually maybe been in a criminal courtroom every now and then, like Andrew Weissman. They should just have him, let him be the host, and he'll tell you exactly what's going on because he knows. But to pretend that they're never going to participate in a plea, that's not true. That's completely untrue.
So much like nearly 100 years ago, when women were swooning and lamenting the passing of Rudolph Valentino, sapiosexual women today are mourning the loss of Henry Kissinger at the age of 100.
And we have video.
I was wondering where that was going.
I don't know what I was doing, but
we've got video.
Some called him a war criminal for his role in bombing Cambodia and widening the war in Vietnam.
Cambodia, 40,000 people died. That was carpet bombing.
Kissinger encouraged the Argentina Dirty War in 1976, was the architect behind the illegal and murderous bombings of Cambodia and Laos, supported Augusto Pinochet's brutal military coup in Chile, and turned a blind eye to alleged genocide in Bangladesh.
And ladies, please remember, all those things are red flags. But yes, Henry Kissinger is dead. which just goes to show you that if you have zero morals, you'll lead a long, stress-free life. He committed massacres and lived to be 100, while the rest of us over here are dying at 47 because we can't stop stressing over the time we waved to a person who was actually waving to someone behind us.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know how he did it. You know, I mean, I was a nerd. I still am. I couldn't give it away on 7th Avenue, but he's got Jill St. John, a Bond girl, Princess Diana, all these women, you know, fawning all over him. I mean, I just don't get it. That's the book he should have written.
Do you remember his quote? Do you remember his quote on that issue?
murder.
No, what
No,
did he
Bill,
say?
what was it?
His famous quote on that is "Power is sexy."
Yeah.
It was the famous quote on that issue. There's some truth to that.
Yeah, I bet his elevator went downtown too. But that's
How's the news coverage? That's an MSNBC weekend show. How's the coverage been on the networks and CNN and what have you? I haven't seen any of it.
I haven't seen any of it either because I don't have cable. But I thought the prestige newspaper obits that I read were fair. Ben Rhodes, who served on the NS, served in, I can't remember what his job was. He served in the Obama
Security Council.
Thank you. I was going to say the NSA, but it wasn't the NSA, the NSC. Under the Obama administration, had a very good column about it in the Times. Mm-hmm. And the only other commentary I saw was and somebody on Twitter saying that the NPR obit was shameless, but that it was updated. It was obviously something they had in a drawer somewhere. So
yeah, the obits I was reading were pretty sterilized. I mean, they were, they were fair. They were even-handed. There was not much editorializing. The Times, I also read the Irish Times to see what's going on overseas, and it's just basically a chronology of his existence, of his life, and what he did and where he came from.
Yeah.
And there's also the acknowledgement that some people revile him and some people revere him. And so I thought that the obituaries were relatively fair historically, but they didn't do a lot of editorializing. I'm sorry, Steve, go ahead.
I think that when you talk about reviling or revering, anybody in my age group, anybody that was coming of age in the 60s and had to put up with not just the Vietnam War, but the bombings and all the stuff that was described by the first guy, I don't know how anybody could revere a guy like that. Particularly, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't he the son of or family of Holocaust survivors?
Yeah, they escaped.
1938.
They escaped before.
Yeah, it's just beyond my comprehension that anybody can quote revere a guy like that. Who I don't know who that lady was. It was so funny, but what she was saying was she was saying in a joking way, but it was accurate. I mean, the guy didn't give a shit about it.
No,
who knows how many people died.
Rolling Stone. The headline on Rolling Stone was "Media and Conservatives Team Up to Lionize War Criminal Henry Kissinger." They point out that I'm so happy he's dead. I must have 10 minutes. I must have gotten 100 texts and emails from people going, "Hey Barb, he's finally gone." One story that I read said that you could count up to 3 million people dead because of his policies, directly and indirectly, between Argentina and Cambodia. I mean, there's Tony Bourdain's famous quote: "Anyone who's ever been to Cambodia is going to want to beat Henry Kissinger to death with their bare hands." And I mean, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I read somewhere yesterday that all over the Cambodian border with Vietnam, there are these strange round water holes, which they are referred to. They're all about 30 feet in diameter, and they're referred to as American swimming pools. And they are the obviously the bomb craters left over from Henry's secret bombing of Cambodia. So yeah, there's another funny line I heard, and I don't know if this is true or apocryphal, but something about how he had a brother who emigrated with the family at the same time, but spoke perfect English with no accent whatsoever. And somebody said, "Why do you not have an accent, but your brother, sounds very German?" And he said, "Well, Henry never listens to anybody." So
my friend Barry Crimmins used to have this. He would imitate. He would do an imitation of Henry Kissinger, and he would say, "If we're not careful, innocent lives will be spared." And So dead, and I couldn't be happier about it. I might have a party when they finally put that old criminal into. He's going into Arlington.
What?
How?
They're
Wait.
very good
What?
Arlington?
This morning that he is
Shonda.
That is a Shonda. Oh my!
Would that be Texas?
Right near the stadium. They're burying him near the stadium.
Was he ever married? Does he have children?
Yeah, his wife's name was Nancy, and he's got a son named David, and he's got a daughter who, by the way, he actually then finagled because she was a fan to get onto the set of the Brady Bunch to visit the cast members. So,
that's right. I remember a Nancy Kissinger from like the Society columns in Washington about that time. So
I think she was a long-suffering wife.
I wonder where she's buried. That he's going to be in Arlington. Thank God, at least she got rid of that guy. I assume she's not. She's probably dead by now.
I think she's still alive.
Oh, really?
I think she is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because they don't put spouses in Arlington, do they? I don't think they do.
No.
So was going to be.
So in death, she will finally get away from that.
I think Jackie O is buried at Arlington.
Next to.
Maybe she got a pass for president. I don't know.
I think so. I'm mindful of the late Christopher Hitchens' book, The Trial of Henry Kissinger. And just to read you the back little blurb, he says, his own lonely impunity is rank. It smells to heaven. If it is allowed to persist, then we shall shamefully vindicate the ancient philosopher Anacharsis, who maintained that laws were like cobwebs, strong enough to detain only the weak, and too weak to hold the strong. In the name of innumerable victims, known and unknown, it is time for justice to take a hand. I think that was after the first whiskey of the day for Hitchens, because quoting Anacharsis is pretty much. But I'm going to be curious to see how history judges Kissinger. Bill.
Two things. One, if you haven't read it, there's a great article on this in Huffington Post. The headline there is Henry Kissinger, America's most notorious war criminal, dies at 100. One thing I did not know, and I thought I knew too much about Kissinger to be comfortable, is that he approved each and every one of the 3,875 bombings in Cambodia, secret bombings in Cambodia. But I to loop this into other stories that we're going to talk about, I think one of the most amazing things for me is that this particular evil person gives real meaning to the position that the ends justify the means. I mean, he was unapologetic right up to the end. He never saw anything wrong in what he did. All these lives that he killed, what he did in Cambodia and Vietnam, he should have gone to prison for. But he never apologized for it because he believed that the ends of protecting democracy, whatever the hell that means, which I don't think he did, was justified the means that he used. And I think that you see that now in the Middle East. I think you see it in many places. It is, I think, Trumparian.
So Bill, do you think he was he the anomaly to American foreign policy, or was he its avatar?
Huh. Well, it's unfortunately a good question. I'm not, when you read what Blinken said about him, I was terrified. Blinken held him up, said, I consulted with him regularly since I've been Secretary of State. Wow. He is an icon.
Two things. One, Jackie Kennedy, I just checked, is buried in Arlington Cemetery. And the second thing is, Kissinger deserves everything the way he's being portrayed, but he's not the dictator of the United States. I mean, this was carried out by the United States government under a succession of presidents. And so to see him not as an anomaly, but rather consistent with U.S. foreign policy in Korea.
He was an employee.
Yeah, and in Korea, the United States killed about 1 million Korean civilians. It's not par for the course.
Yeah. Maybe Blinken talked to him because it's just as a way of gathering, and what does the devil say? You know what I mean? What You want to kind of say, and what is the worst thing we could do in this situation? Let's ask Kissinger.
That's not what Blinken said.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, he didn't say he took his
Blinken
advice.
held him up as an icon.
Okay.
When Hillary Clinton was running for president, she said he is a friend, and I go to him, and she had her picture taken with him regularly, and made no bones about the fact that she relied on his advice, and probably during her husband's presidency and when she was running. It was one of the things that made me hold my nose while I was voting for her.
Yeah, but Barb, I think that was Hillary's way of getting back at Bill for being with Jennifer Flowers. So she got
got a pass.
Famous ladies man.
All you people think about is sex. We are serious. This is a serious TV show or whatever.
His intellect was enormous.
You're giving us a lot of credit for this being a TV show, Barb, but thank you for that.
Well, one of the things, before we move on, one of the things that one point that Ben Rhodes made in his column is that we would not have forged the relationship with China that we did without him. And that was like probably, and people forget, if they didn't take Russian in high school the way I did, that the Russians and the Chinese, even though they were both communist nations, were very, very suspicious of each other. And so by forming an alliance with another communist country, they essentially split the potential alliance between China and Russia and weakened the Soviet Union. And so there's something to be said for that. But unfortunately,
back when the famous trip to China occurred in 1972, Kissinger was still only the national security advisor. The Secretary of State was actually William Rogers. But when Kissinger got there, he acted as though he was the highest ranking diplomat in the U.S. And Rogers was really C-blocked by Kissinger, and it became actually an issue of protocol that the Chinese didn't know what to do with Rogers because he was sidelined, and so they basically had to entertain him by playing cards while Kissinger was in the room with Nixon, Zhou Enlai, and Mao Zedong.
I don't want anybody to think that I'm really this cultured, but there is a great opera. Remember, my daughter was an opera singer. Okay, it's the only reason I go to operas, but. I think it's called Nixon in China.
Nixon in China.
Is that the opera name of the opera?
It is.
The opera is great, and it tells this story, and it includes the story of Kissinger and Rogers. It's kind of a fascinating thing for a non-opera fan. It actually kept me awake. I think generally operas are a good sleep ruined, but.
So Bill, I take it that Kissinger was a hefty baritone in that opera?
He was.
That's what I thought. And said that in Kissinger's defense, he was terrified that democracies were too vulnerable to be overtaken by dictatorships. Thus, anything went to keep the democracy, except, of course, and where he suppressed democracies by keeping strongmen in place. So I think that has to also be considered. Well, the media coverage on Kissinger is certainly divergent, shall we say, as it was with Madonna. But what about the media coverage regarding what's happening in the Middle East? I think that there seems to be quite a bit, and Allan has pointed his finger.
Two things. Let's play a quick commercial, and then we have a video about the media coverage in the Middle East. So
I was just working jobs and jobs. It wasn't a career. We were just living paycheck if I was making it to the next paycheck. By me going through the program and obtaining my GED, I have more job opportunities, better job opportunities. I got paid to get my GED, and now I have a great job with benefits working for the Detroit Police Department. Detroit had my back.
All right, we have a video now from about the Middle East coverage here.
I will try to capture some of this avalanche of man-made human suffering that we're seeing in Gaza right now. And it's very difficult to do, following on from the reports that I've been hearing on your news network leading up to my interview, because everything is humanized except the experience of the Palestinian people in Gaza. We don't hear stories about entire families wiped from civil registries, of children loved by their parents who were killed in an instant, of all the children who have survived the death of their entire extended families. This acronym, Wounded Child, No Surviving Family, is not unique.
Wow.
Okay. Bill, why don't we get started on this topic?
What
I think you're on mute.
Bill is
You're muted,
muted.
Bill.
Let's see if. Hey, Bill.
People have been trying to unmute me people have been trying to mute me for years, unsuccessfully. Just did it to myself. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I asked Ellen to include this. This is something that's really, for me, incredibly disheartening. I watch, as everybody else does, these incredibly compelling stories about the hostages from Israel and the suffering that has gone on as a result of their capture. It's not that I object to that coverage. I object to the fact that if you listen to American media, you'd think that it wasn't going on with the Palestinians. You would think that, and it's subtle stuff. Al Jazeera's got a great article on this that I read. Look at they're talking about Israeli children, and when they talk about Palestinian children being killed, they refer to them as minors. These subtle things. I mean, this is a propaganda machine that is working. Now, I will tell you that I have the same problem when I listen to Middle Eastern coverage from the Middle East, that they do the same thing to the Israelis. It's awful. But the press, the fifth estate, should be better at this. They should provide a balanced approach. And if they did, we'd be a lot more offended by this war.
I think it's the fourth estate.
Bill, it's the fourth estate. I work for the fifth estate.
I was going to say I'm bringing back my childhood.
I thought Nancy's head was going to explode like in the movie Scanner.
I apologize.
I'm retired. I don't give a shit anymore. Go ahead.
I would say I agree with Bill. I mean, look, the idea that there's this coverage about the hostages and about the suffrage and all that, and about the massacres in Israel. It's not that shouldn't happen, but there should be more, like the woman was saying. I mean, in terms, we don't see enough coverage about the orphans that are being created in this war and stuff. And part of that is that, look, when you watch CNN, MSNBC, people are talking from the balcony or whatever, or the rooftop of a nice hotel in Tel Aviv. The American media particularly has great access. I mean, they're being embedded with the Israeli army. Hamas is not letting anyone embed, and Hamas isn't the most sophisticated when it comes to media. Like in the very beginning, they were the Sky News from England was interviewing one of the Hamas spokesmen, and he said, "Well, what about all the civilians who were killed?" And he goes, "No." And he goes, "No." He goes, "What are you talking about? What about the concert?" He goes, "Israeli propaganda." And, you can't, I mean, it just shows sort of a lack of sophistication, but I agree there needs to be more. And I don't know if it needs more, if the media needs to have more access to Gaza, but it's also more dangerous to be in Gaza than it is in Tel Aviv. So.
I think during the ceasefire, though, Alan, from what I understand, the Israelis were preventing media access to Gaza. Okay. So I think there was also that as an issue of whether there could in fact be international coverage.
This is not just about the war. This is not just about the war. This is about how many American media outlets have people in Gaza at any period of time, or in the West Bank. They just don't do it. They don't cover it. Now, I understand why
Associated Press does. Associated Press has Gaza reporters.
Okay. And why aren't they interviewing Hamas spokesman? I mean, that probably would work for Israel's benefit. But still, they have spokesmen in other countries that are capable.
In Qatar, yeah.
And locally, I mean, nationally and locally, there's pro-Palestinian people willing to speak to what's occurring there. But it's like the Iraq War. We're the good guys and they're the evil enemy. And even if they are the evil enemy or perceived by some people, it would be interesting to hear what they have to say.
But Peter, my point is this: the 8-year-old that was shot by the IDF wasn't the evil enemy. That 8-year-old.
No, right. Exactly. No, I agree with you.
Brother, we're not covering the human part of the story. And when you don't cover the human part of the story, you're dehumanizing the Palestinian people. And that's what's allowing this to go on.
Well, that erodes the Israeli position then to do so. And the networks don't seem to be
you mean it would be balanced and fair?
Yes. Who's the guy? I only listen to MSNBC on Sirius Radio. So there's a guy that sounds exactly like Cary Grant that's always talking.
Mehdi Hassan?
I don't know, an Israeli spokesman.
Oh, okay. Sounds like Cary Grant. You mean he says Judy?
Almost like that. Judy. Yeah.
Okay.
He's a dead ringer for Cary Grant.
So there's Mark Regev, who I think is one of a longtime spokesperson, and interestingly enough, he was recently on MSNBC with Mehdi Hassan, and word comes yesterday that Mehdi Hassan's weekend show was actually axed, ostensibly to get ready for MSNBC's 2024 campaign coverage. But it seems for some who've been watching, suspicious that someone who actually puts people's feet to the proverbial flame was let go. So I don't know. I mean, do you think it's more an American media issue? Because I mean, even you have, for example, Haaretz out of Israel that gives pretty critical coverage on all sides of this.
Mm-hmm. I think Haaretz has done a really good job and been very critical when they've had to be critical. Their columnists are very out there, and the Israeli government has tried to sanction them because they haven't sort of played along. But I think I read Haaretz probably 4 or 5 times a day. I think they do a great job.
Yeah. So
I think it's a problem mainly with Western media, though I think the BBC does a better job than most. I think Al Jazeera tries to be a more balanced approach. I think they're looking for some legitimacy. But what's going on? I mean, look, this is a fairly well-informed group. How many settlers, how many Israeli settlers are in the West Bank? How much coverage does that get? And how many Palestinian settlers have gone into Israel and created encampments? The fact that 450,000 people have gone into the West Bank from Israel and created settlements, and that the Israeli military protects them when Israel claims to be, this great democracy. How many Palestinians are being detained with no charges for years at a time? And I'll tell you, the number of Israelis that are being held without charges, I bet you it's close to 0.
I would think most Americans probably don't even know what settlers are or what the settler movement is. I mean,
once you move outside of political circles, Jews and Arabs, people, it's the news cycle. People were horrified by what happened on October 7th. That's so far gone. Now, most people are seeing what's happening in Gaza. And I mean, I always thought that people that aren't directly connected with all this, that their stereotype was Arabs are crazy and Jews are mean, over there. And this has been going on for 1,000 years. So all the details that we're so connected with and mean, and help us understand what's going on, I think it's lost on the general public, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I think a lot of the stories of the settlers were just considered Jewish propaganda and sort of blown off because in different, you know, you work in different circles. Peter and I are probably in closer circles that would talk more about Palestine, people that go to Gaza quite often. Before this, you know, talked about this, but it was, you know, it was blown off. And I think that now, you know, again, what happened in October did not happen in a vacuum. And now
there
we're
was
finding out.
Well, on that point, Barb, there was an article in the New York Times that dropped last night about how apparently the Israelis had the
For a year.
entire Hamas plan for a whole year. Yeah, Fish, go ahead.
I think, unfortunately, that what Peter said is absolutely true. I really don't think that other than Jews, Arabs, and people who really stay up on the news, they don't really have an understanding of what's going on there. The use of the word settlers, for instance, settlers means something to me that's different than it might mean to say, oh, settlers. That's like the Daniel Boone came here and settled Kentucky. You know, no, I mean what it means to those who have relatives in Israel and who have watched Bibi Netanyahu destroy that country. We know exactly what it means when you start talking about settlers. When Bill says about the IDF letting these people do what they're doing around Hebron, let's say, which is it's a Palestinian city, and they let 80 people or 180 or 580 come in there with protection from the army. The bigger story, you have to read Thomas Friedman's columns or something like that if you're a person who's not familiar with the Middle East. And then it's kind of beyond what people really know about. They start talking about things that happened with Yitzhak Rabin and the Oslo Accords. If you're not familiar with that, Peter, you're exactly right. All you see is what's on TV, and then it comes down to what Bill was saying: who can show more children who've been orphaned, who can show more dead bodies. That's the stuff that people are seeing. They're not getting any understanding at all of how we got to this point and where it started, going as far back as 1967. And that's speaking as a Jew with a sister who lives in Israel.
You know, it goes kind of to Nancy's point that everything's entertainment. You know, to the extent maybe we're not taking things substantively seriously anymore because everything is entertainment. Even the death of children and the destruction of a nation becomes compelling TV. And so it kind of speaks to the Western, at least the American mindset about the Western mindset, that we are shallow as shit. We don't, there's no depth. And we see these things because they keep our eyes glued to the TV without much thought. It's an embarrassment. It's sad.
Or Joel, it takes on a domestic dimension. I mean, here in Michigan, for example, last week, an allegation by Senate candidate on the Democratic side, Hill Harper, that he was approached by somebody from AIPAC and offered $20 million to drop out of the Senate race against Alyssa Slotkin for the primary and run against Rashida Tlaib in Michigan 12. And then now comes news that Nasser Beydoun, another Democratic candidate for Senate, was similarly approached with an offer of $20 million, 10 in funding from AIPAC, and then 10 from a donor allegedly related to it. So these things do have stickiness beyond just the entertainment component, which is rather large. What does it say now that these things are kind of being played out in public? Allan?
Well, I have a question about the $20 million. I mean, when people say I've offered $20 million to run, and you say some would go for the campaigning, are they suggesting that the other is like, here, you can pocket it just to run?
No.
I
think what you're saying is 10 million will come from AIPAC, and then the other 10 million will be bundled. From legal contributions. I mean, nobody's saying you can put $10 million in your pocket. I mean, it's hard to launder that much.
But what we're also hearing is that one of the Nelsons from Eastern Market, that, I mean, I don't know if that's been reported or what, that he was the one who approached, and he does not strike me as the guy who represents AIPAC. He does not. I mean, I'm skeptical of some of the stuff. There's no question. Look, AIPAC last time and this time as well is going to try to do everything to get rid of Rashida Tlaib in the same way that they got rid of Andy Levin. They didn't like Andy Levin's stance, that he was too much with J Street instead of AIPAC, and they really did a full court blitz on him and got him out, and he got killed by 20%. And so, no question, look, AIPAC is going to look again. They hate Rashida Tlaib. They're going to do everything they can. So it's not unheard of that kind of money. I'm just skeptical of who the word is who's approaching them. I'm skeptical that he's the guy.
You know, a little another aspect of it. I went to this rally in Dearborn on Wednesday night. It was the International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people. I wanted to, you know, and one thing that struck me, I've not seen that kind of resolve and energy and the force since the civil rights movement. So this has created a movement of broad proportions on behalf of the Palestinian people. I was also curious because on my Facebook page, I've had a lot of people, I suspect even some of the people that some of you may know, liberal progressive Jews in Huntington Woods and in West Bloomfield, who say that I'm a Hamas supporter. What else? I mean, everything I'm an anti-Semite and all that. I wanted to see, is there any anti-Semitism present there? The only time the word Jew or Jewish was mentioned was in a positive context, and a spokesperson for Jewish Voice for Peace gave a speech that brought the house down. But I think more importantly, they were saying no Trump, no Biden, genocide, Biden, calling him Genocide Joe. This is the base. I don't know if anybody saw the article today in the New York Times about Dearborn and the mayor of Dearborn. He gave a barn burner introduction of a speech that you would have thought he was from a Palestinian group rather than the mayor of the city. So a whole section that the Democratic Party depends on is talking about writing in Gaza. And,
what do these people think are going to happen to them if Donald Trump is president?
God Almighty! It's like it's like lambs to the slaughter. I mean, it's crazy.
Stupid.
I mean,
well, what do you think would happen? Is that the United States would provide Israel with 2,000-pound bombs that they would drop on a city,
and probably then turn around again?
No.
Well, wait. As the local Palestinian,
local Palestinian Bill Seikaly,
Barb and Peter are both right. I mean, but the vehemence, Peter, speaking as a Palestinian, been around for a long time. I mean, you know, I'm empathetic to Holocaust survivors, mainly because I think my people are facing genocide now. You can call it anything you want. It's a long-term process. It hasn't. They don't have gas chambers, but there is no question in my mind that the Palestinian people are being eliminated systematically.
Yeah.
Not just by Israelis, by the way. I mean, if you're a Palestinian, you understand you don't trust other Arab nations either. They're out for their own interest. And if you're me, you know, all due respect to the other people here, I'm not a Muslim. I'm not this is a Hamas is an Islamic organization, not a Palestinian nationalist organization.
Right.
These are subtleties that are important to me. But, you know, when you look what's happening to the Palestinians, they're either being killed off, their homes are being destroyed, or they're being spread out throughout the world. And we're fighting for our survival. I don't care what anybody else calls it. You know, I'm a Palestinian. My wife's Jewish. I'm empathetic to everybody's interest. But if you look at what's going on in Gaza, this is, as Steve has pointed out, a systematic effort on the part of Netanyahu to destroy not just Hamas, but the Palestinian people. And that's a danger that creates. Hamas will look like a picnic, just like Hamas makes PLO look reasonable, right?
I have a question.
Worse and worse, because there's nothing else you can do except use terror. And by the way, and I need to say this, if you don't call what Israel is doing in Gaza right now as terror, then you're not paying attention.
Agreed.
Okay.
Agreed.
Alan.
I have a question for Bill. I don't argue with anything you're saying there. What do you say to people who, you know, as Hemingway says, no matter how justified you are in war, it's still a crime. What do you say to the argument when people say Israel, when they were attacked, they're fighting for their survival, that Hamas has basically pushed for the genocide of the Israelis or the Jews? How do we, where do we go from there?
You know, it's a circular argument, Alan. It's so frustrating to me, because if you don't think that that's what Hamas is doing, let's take Hamas out of it. You don't think that's what the Palestinian people are doing. This is an existential crisis for the Palestinian people. That's what creates Hamas. You know, there are thousands and thousands, I think it's 45,000 people, Palestinians, being detained in Israeli prison. Many of them women and children. Remember, they had a policy of picking up anybody who threw stones, no matter what their age, no matter what their background, and detaining them.
Yep.
They just released in this package, I think it was a kid who was arrested when he was 8 years old and he's now 14 or something like that. But he's been detained for years and years. You don't think that kid's been radicalized by this process? You don't think that that's what creates Hamas?
Yeah.
And
saw this in Iraq. I mean,
so you can talk all you want about, well, we're fighting for our survival. What do you think the Palestinians are doing? And let me tell you what's not happening is people aren't stepping up and saying, stop. Enough is enough. Nobody's stopping Netanyahu. Nobody's stopping him. Now, I'm a bit of a history student. I can't think of any leader of any country that was ever removed during a war. So, you know, I don't expect that will happen here, but that ought to be what happens. Netanyahu,
I think Nicholas II in World War I in Russia.
Okay.
I want to add something to what Bill's saying, that I think what's happened over history, whether we want to go back, you know, the Jews say, okay, we had the Holocaust. We therefore we needed a place, and it wasn't just, I mean, it was in the 30s, 20s, the anti-Semitism. And my point is, and I know you've been critical of the creation of Israel, but what step by step, each side has justification, and what we're seeing is constant justification, and we have to at some point stop. All the justification is real. It's all real. Both sides have real justification for what they're doing, but we have to cut through the justification and finally get some reasonable minds on both sides.
And when you say we, who's we, Alan?
I'd like to think you and I could do that, but
you and I could. Nobody put us in charge.
Yeah. I'm saying both sides, on the Israeli side and on the Palestinian side. And
the Israelis are out of option if they want to maintain Israel as a religious, ethnic, exclusivist state. They literally cannot do anything more than they're doing. To allow anything else, it's going to disappear as a Jewish state. How about a two-state solution? All the liberals and progressives want that. Where's that going to be? On the West Bank? Are they going to take 325,000 settlers and push them back into Israel? There'll be a civil war. They are doing essentially what they have to do in order to maintain it as the state that it is. And that means,
Joel.
What Bill said, essentially an ethnic cleansing, a genocide. That's their goal. They're going to have Eretz Israel. They're going to have Israel from the river to the sea, just like the Likud program Charter said. Yeah, and there are two options. I mean, I know. How about a singular secular state? Well, then, as Meir Kahane said, the fascist Zionist, he said that Israel can either be Jewish or democratic, and I think he was right. So Jewish friends of mine have begun saying perhaps, and no one likes to approach this, perhaps Israel was a mistake from the beginning.
And I would just one comment is that if both entities are in an existential crisis and believe this is an existential question for them both, then the depths of inhumanity are going to increase. If you surely see it as existential, this is how our country must survive, same with the Palestinians and the Israelis, you're going to see a depth, a decline. You're going to see more inhumanity. You're going to see worse behavior. You're going to see much more death because both entities see themselves as being existentially threatened, and people will do anything to survive. That's what we know in life.
Joel, I agree with you. I completely agree with what Joel said. I think that's incredibly insightful. That's why I asked the question is who needs to do something? Because you can't, when you're in an existential crisis, both sides in an existential crisis, and somebody is being provided with 2,000-pound bombs and F-14s and all the tanks and all the weaponry they need, and the other side isn't, that says something. And as an American, who I am first, I'm an American Palestinian. I'm not a Palestinian American. I'm ashamed of our country for refusing to do the right thing and say, we're not going to support this nonsense. And if we need to put our own troops on the border to stop this, that's what we're going to do. But instead, we arm one side.
I got it. So I think that the answer to your question is there's got to be a we. Somewhere there's got to be a commonality of interest and a commonality of effort and of dedication. We don't have that we. I think it has to be more than Israel, more than Palestine. I think it has to be more global because we need a hell of a lot of support.
I agree. The Arab countries.
Absolutely, but my point is this: if Israel truly thinks it's that it's an existential crisis, their advantage in arms and technology they're going to use to the full extent because people will do anything to fucking survive. And I think that there'll be more terror.
Can I ask Steve a question? Steve, I mean, you lived this as much as anybody I know with your sister there. Is it Netanyahu and the extreme right that view this as an existential crisis, or is it the entire state of Israel that views it as an existential crisis?
I believe it's the entire state of Israel to this extent. And the only way to answer this is to talk about what came before October 7th. I think, again, like Peter said earlier on, the fact that most people don't really know what's going on in the Middle East in general and Israel in particular. When Bibi took over with this government, this is what changed everything. You've seen tech people, you've seen educated people, Israelis born in Israel who have left. And I think that when they look at it as an existential crisis, I believe that my late brother-in-law, paratrooper in 2 wars, mind you, was not exactly a lefty, right? But he predicted that this would happen as more Orthodox people come into power. And as what people like to call the settlers, which is the interlopers that keep on going, which Sharon started this all those years ago, the existential crisis for the normal secular Israeli is that this is not the country that we believed we were occupying. That's the existential crisis. If you are going to allow people like the two, Ben Gvir and Smotrich, to be part of the government and with the kinds of attitudes that they have, that's an existential crisis. Not that the state won't survive through military force or whatever it is, but do I want to be part of that state? And that was the first crisis. And that really is what laid the foundation for all of this. All this conversation now comes back to the same stuff about war and violence and this and that and the other. The crisis in Israel has to do with that government, most particularly with Mr. Netanyahu and the people he surrounds himself with.
So the existential crisis is a crisis within the Israeli system. It's not the Arabs versus the Israelis.
And I'm saying with respect to those who are like my sister, secular people, all of whom served in the military, you got to keep in mind, it's when you have people in Israel that are objecting to what a government's doing, it's not like here where nobody's been drafted for 50 years. Everybody there, other than, of course, the ultras and the rest of the Orthodox, they've all been in the military. It's not like they don't know that Israel has to defend itself, but they want to have an Israel that's worthy of being defended before you go and have a situation like this. That's what I would say is what you're going to get from the secular, educated populace in Israel. And when you see people leaving, I mean, wait to see if the war ended tomorrow. I'd like to see what the economy is going to look like, because a lot of people are already, and who's leaving? The most educated, the most technologically savvy, the people who get the economy going. That's an existential crisis.
Alan with the.
Can I follow up with
Yeah,
a question to Alan? I mean, look, one of the things I think you have to look at is that the Times article last night talked about the fact that they had literally the book, the plan, for over a year. Is it beyond imagination that Netanyahu and the right wing in the government sat on it, not because they didn't believe it was possible, but because the calculus that if they try this, our ability to eliminate them will then exist? I mean, that's why I connected it with Kissinger. This sounds like a very Kissinger-esque maneuver.
I was here in Los Angeles, and Wednesday night went out for dinner with a friend, and a guy at the restaurant who was in Israeli intelligence 20 years ago, and actually went back recently and went into the Gaza with his old troop, and he thinks that there was some type of conspiracy to let in. There's two arguments about the conspiracy. One, that they were going to let in a few, and there'd be some killings, very low, but Netanyahu would look bad. Then the other one is that Netanyahu thought, okay, this will, save us and reunite us and stuff like that. And they're just conspiracy theories. And this guy was in intelligence, and he was obviously talking. He was in the Gaza. He went to where they had the concert. He went to the kibbutz. So he's, who knows what it is. But, to your question to Steve, I agree 100% with Steve. I've talked to my relatives who are all, they were in the military. They're very liberal. They hate Netanyahu, but they want to destroy Hamas, and they're freaked out about this whole thing, like we were about 9/11. And so it's more than just, I'm just telling you, it's just more not a liberal or conservative thing. In Israel, I think it is, the country as a whole is an existential question. So go ahead, Bill.
Before we go,
Bill is nodding his head.
Well, I mean, to me, this whole thing harkens back to he who does not study history is doomed to repeat it. How many times do we have to know that if you go in and destroy the infrastructure of a company or a country, and you have nothing left, that what follows is going to be a disaster? How many times do we need to learn that lesson?
Apparently a few more.
Well, let me.
I don't want to be overly cynical about this, but there is little doubt in my mind, especially beginning with what's going on this morning, just this morning, that there will be a movement afoot to completely destroy Gaza and allow settlers to then come in to Gaza and expand the Israeli boundary.
I don't think that'll ever happen. I'm skeptical of that. But I'm not skeptical of the first part you say, but I'm skeptical that that's a Netanyahu thing, and that's some of his crazy cabinet members. I don't think that's going to happen in terms of settlers.
Well, before we go to,
as my wife's family would say, from your mouth to God's ear.
Well, before we cut to our commercial, before we have our last segment, I do want to announce that apparently celebrities do die in threes. First, a woman to sit on the U.S. Supreme Court, Sandra Day O'Connor, passed away at the age of 93. Certainly a trailblazer, nominated to the court by then President Ronald Reagan, 1981. Excellent movie with Walter Matthau and Jill Clayburgh, first Monday in October, if you haven't seen it, which sort of presaged the eventuality that then became Sandra Day O'Connor. So just commemorating that milestone.
Let's go. Whoever thought we would view her as a moderate?
Right.
Yeah.
She looks damn good to me now.
She was a bleeding heart liberal to Rehnquist, but yeah. Okay, Alan.
Thanks, Charles, for letting me use your gardening supplies. I'll make sure I put it back in the garage. Man, tending to that lawn is a lot of work.
Tell you the truth, Jim, I'm more concerned about keeping this house.
What's going on?
Well, Sarah lost her job 2 months ago, right?
Yeah.
Since we lost that income, the bills have been piling up, and we're so far behind. I don't want to lose the house because of back taxes. I don't know what to do.
I understand. The same thing happened to my sister and her husband when he lost his job. Do you know that the Wayne County Treasurer has plans and programs to help people stay in their homes?
No, I didn't. Tell me about it.
Yeah, go to www.treasure.waynecounty.com to see if you qualify.
What's that site again?
www.treasure.waynecounty.com.
Got it.
All right, and now to our last segment. Allan.
Downtown Detroit, Robert Wells, Schmuck of the Week.
So, Peter, I'm not sure how familiar you are with Schmuck of the Week. Would you like to go first, or would you like to ease into it by hearing someone else go?
Let me go last.
Okay. Fish, I know you like to usually make an exit, and we might be a little bit over your time, so I'll let you go first.
My Schmuck of the Week is George Santos, but he has it as people often do. He has accompanying schmucks along with him, and the schmucks, in my view, were whoever they were yesterday when I was in the gym, and this guy was proudly proclaiming, and there were microphones galore, and that meant that there were camera people and there were interviewers there that had nothing better to do than let this idiot spout off in the front of the steps of the Capitol. So George is a winner. He'll be a loser soon when he's locked up in federal prison. And all you, the rest of you journalists that were around giving him a chance to talk, you're also in there for the Schmucks of the Week. That's my guys.
You know, Saeed, before we go on to, I have a 20-second video. It's a non sequitur here, but a little bit of a smile.
Oh,
What's your big beef with the Nazis?
What's my big beef?
Yes, it seems like you're always
What's
knocking.
my big beef?
Everything you're always knocking the Nazis. Oh, it's time for Mel Brooks to knock the Nazis, it seems.
Oh, I don't know. I think they're rude.
Now, when that guy dies, we should have a national day of mourning because you know he's
Wonderful.
past 100 now too.
Wonderful.
Mel Brooks.
oh, Jimmy Glick?
No.
I love Jimmy Glick. That was a great character.
There it was.
That was great.
Well, to be fair to Mel, he was also hard on Inquisitors, but that's for a different show. Okay, Barb, who's your Schmuck of the Week?
I don't think it'll be a surprise. Last week, our friends at the Michigan Republican Party had two different meetings to try to pick their new way. One of them, they got a free room at a small Baptist church in Redford Township. Not Redford Township, but that was the best they could do with the money that they had was to get a free room in a little Baptist church. The other Republican Party met at the Token Lounge in Westland, which used to be
Token. Oh my God!
They used to be famous for their wet T-shirt contests.
Honestly, next they'll be going to Harpo's in Detroit. You know, just
they continue to be the schmucks that keep on giving. So once more, it's the Michigan Republican clown car.
Okay.
Were either of these locales, Barb, having a sign outside that said dozens of beautiful girls and 3 ugly ones?
I wanted to go with popcorn and just sit and watch
That's
it,
where you
but
go to see the Guar tribute band. You know,
I have to say, somehow the Token
Hey,
was
Nancy, I got
so
I had a student who came up to me one day and said that he converted to Islam because of me, and I said, okay, I got to hear this one. And he says, well, you convinced me that I could convert to Islam and still listen to Guar.
your efforts don't go unnoticed.
No, you don't get it. If somebody converts to Islam because of you, you're guaranteed paradise. But I don't know
Allahu Akbar. I mean...
Yes, but I don't know. I mean, do I on the day of judgment do I dress up like Guar? So, Bill, who's your schmuck?
I've got two. Yesterday was I think it was yesterday, was the second anniversary of the shooting in Oxford. It had a little bit of involvement, but Jennifer and Jim Crumley have got to be my schmucks of the week. They give a whole new meaning to bad parenting with incredible consequences to literally thousands of people. It has had such a profound personal effect on so many people that I've dealt with out there that they're my schmucks of the week. And can I take one more second? Would it be okay?
Sure.
Sure. Peter, I've never met you before, but I've been a big fan of yours for many years.
Oh, well, thank you.
Enjoyed meeting you here. And again, I know I've said it before, but it bears repeating. There aren't very many places in which a group of people like this from different backgrounds can come on and debate with great civility, great empathy. Allan wrote me a note earlier this week about being concerned that I may have offended him. Or he may have offended me. I can't even imagine.
I never got a note like that from you. God.
Well, let me tell you a little story that Allan may not share with you. I was in a room with Allan and a number of Jewish liberals who were, we were trying to raise some money for what I thought was a very good cause. And these fellows apparently did not know my background, made an assumption that I was Jewish. And they started talking about, don't you get nervous when you're sitting in an airport and you see these guys with beads dressed up? And you know, why do they let those people fly? I mean, doesn't that make you nervous? And it was a little tough. Now, I was trying to get money from them for a friend of mine. And so I didn't say what I desperately wanted to say to them. And
a lot of squirming going on.
Not on my part.
on my part.
Yeah.
Going, like.
The point is that the problems are on both sides. You know, I know that some Palestinians have just gone too far. This idea of driving them into the sea, these obnoxious thoughts are awful. But it's not one-sided. I mean, one of the nicknames I had in high school was Sam the N-word. I don't use that word, so I'm not going to use it. But that was one of my nicknames in high school, and I found it incredibly offensive. And it's gone on all my life because I won't hide the fact that I'm a Palestinian. I'm proud of that fact. I'm proud of my people, and we've contributed a lot. We shouldn't be eliminated from this planet, and we need to do something about it. But I appreciate you giving me a voice with you to discuss it. I'm honored to be here. Thanks.
That would be a mensch of the week, just to keep the Yiddish, symmetrical here. And by the way, Bill, in solidarity with you, I've been called that as well, and I'm not even from the Middle East, so you know, I'm just a good old London boy.
Wait. You mean that all Muslims aren't from the Middle East?
Let me just say, though, that of all the events I've been at, the pro-Palestinian events and Hamtramck and Dearborn and Detroit, everything, I've never seen once, not a single sign. One time they're downtown Detroit, thousands and thousands, never drive the Jews out, never from the river. Actually, I think I did see a couple of signs like that. But they're very aware, the people involved in this are very aware of the implications of that. And I don't know what people harbor in their hearts, but it certainly isn't expressed. Hey, I'm talking. Should I do the week? Go ahead.
My friend Sandy Plotkin was driving through Dearborn early on, and he did see a "Gas the Jews" bumper sticker in Dearborn, which was
probably with somebody from Westland, a right winger. I mean, that's where. I mean,
yes, that's a possibility.
That's where the real anti-Semitism is. It's not among Arab people, but among the traditional white right-wing, MAGA types.
Right.
Yeah. My schmuck of the week is so easy. Marjorie Taylor Greene, because she's got a book out called MTG, and it has just, the headline is in Newsweek, "Dropping Like a Stone." And it's now fell to the 10,000th most sold book on the Amazon site. My novel, Summer on Fire, is 3,000 in political fiction. So I'm doing better than her. So
there you go.
The schmuck of the week every week. Though,
Excellent. Joel.
Okay, mine is going to be, again, nothing even remotely substantive. What I'm choosing is whoever made The Golden Bachelor. I watch LS Night with Connie, my significant other. And if I see this guy cry again, he's 72, I can't deal with it. I can't take it. Every fucking show, the guy's in tears. I don't like his dog's dying every day. I don't like it. I'm offended by it. I'm getting to be 72, God knows when, I hope. And, seeing romance between my grandparents.
The subhead for that show is marry a Hoosier dork, because this guy lives in northern Indiana in LaGrange County, and just wait until whoever he picked, and I don't know who he picked because I, like you, got tired of the tears and then my wife passed. Oh, it's like, oh my God.
This was the second hardest moment other than when his wife passed. It's like, you're kidding. Taking the rose.
See, Joel, when you said that you watched The Golden Bachelor last night, I thought you meant the DeSantis Newsom debate. But I was wrong, Nancy.
Okay, am I the last one?
Other than Allen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of Hoosier dorks, my schmuck of the week is Mike Pence, who we learned this week was indeed going to do his master's bidding and not show up at the on January 6th at the
certification.
Thank you. Certification of the election, but was talked into it by his son. His Marine son, who pointed out, Dad, you and I took the same oath. So it's like, wow. And as I pointed out on Twitter, people forget. They say, oh, Mike Pence, he was the governor of Indiana. Before he was the governor of Indiana, he was a congressman. And before he was a congressman, and we know what it takes to be a congressman, George Santos, he was a radio talk show host. I mean, he has a law degree, but his money came from being a radio talk show host. So, it's probably stupid to expect decent behavior. He probably needed his son to remind him of that. But Mike Pence.
All right. Allen.
I'm just going to say all the Republicans who voted against expelling George Santos, I think it's just so shameful. I mean, it's such it's a shanda.
Yeah, a shanda.
That would be 105 of them. So, okay. Very, very, very nice and succinct. Okay, well, my schmuck of the week is none other than King Charles, who allegedly profits off dead people, just like some M. Night Shyamalan movie. He has apparently been using a medieval law to expand his real estate empire. Bona vacantia, which is vacant goods, or basically your average run-of-the-mill escheats law. He's collected $75 million in the past 10 years in the county of Lancashire. And with money that was supposed to go to charity, according to the law of escheats in England. So here he is just simply taking more money in order to deal with Camilla. But this, of course, is piggybacked with the fact that apparently, according to Omid Scobie's latest book, Endgame, he is one of the two royal racists, along with Kate Middleton, who commented on Prince Harry and Princess, or no longer Princess, but Meghan Markle's son Archie, about, what's up with the color? I'm paraphrasing here. So King Charles for a double, you're my schmuck of the week, with an honorable mention. Since we're talking about sartorial splendor of George Santos, Melania Trump, who shows up at Rosalind Carter's funeral as the only former first lady and probably the only person in the whole place, other than the priest, who was not wearing black. So,
she was wearing gray. I'm gonna give her a pass on this.
Well, at least she didn't wear that jacket.
Yeah, she didn't wear the I really don't care to you.
Well, you're giving her a pass, Nancy, for wearing gray because you're a postmodernist. So,
yes, I am.
You want to have some kind of ambiguity.
In my country, we wear gray for the morning. We don't, she's still
she could have worn a T-shirt with the little arrow pointing to Biden and say, he stole the election.
Yeah.
I'm with Steeler.
Yeah, I'm with Steeler.
Okay. So. Well. Listen. Thank you all for being on, and again to echo what Bill said, and also somebody else who is listening and viewing. Thank you for approaching even difficult topics with an awful lot of integrity and quite a bit of humor. without, of course, being mocking about some serious topics. Thank you, Peter Werbe, for joining us. Hope you come back. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Joel. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Barb. And thank you, Allan from the West Coast with the last word.
Drive home safely.
Take care, everybody, and have a great week.
Thank you all.
All right.